Okay, so notes, objectives, 46, 48. When we get done with this, you're going to get on the calendar and finish the rest, just like we've been doing. Finish the rest, so don't redo the ones that I'm going to do with you. Okay, we will grade this class period, okay, before the end of lunch. The new con is assigned. It's due Thursday midnight, okay? And then FFA, if you're gone for FFA, make sure you're checking the calendar so that you know what you missed. You're still responsible for that stuff. It's just not a Friday holiday for all of us. The rest of us are still going. So, okay, here we go. So you're writing this down. I'll give you some time. It's an actual sentence. So if capital H is equal to 28 little h plus 72.34, they want us to find little h when the big H is 132.54. Okay, so what we're doing is we are solving for the little h, okay? And we're replacing the big H with what they say that the big H is, okay? So we're just going to take this number and plug it into that spot right there. So it's 132.54, so I replace the big H with that, equals 28 little h plus 72.34. Okay, so for solving for the little h, order of operations in solving equations, we go backwards, right? You're not going to do the multiplication and division first. You're going to do the adding and subtracting first. Okay, so what am I moving to solve for little h? What would I move to? Do what? 72. Okay, so we're going to move to 72. So how am I going to move it? What am I going to subtract? Okay, so I'm subtracting 72.34. from one side, and what I do to one side, I gotta do to the other side. Okay, so the 28 little h is still there. Gives you 60.20. Okay, what's my last step? Divide. Good, divide. So it's multiply right, so we do the opposite, which is divide by 28, divide by 28. So obviously calculators are going to help you here because you have a decimal. Okay, so it winds up being little h is 2.15. We good so far? Okay, so you'll see something like that, just replacing what it is that they give to you. Okay, the next one, number 21. So 10n plus 16 minus 8n equals 34. Okay, common mistake is when we're combining like terms, people like to do the opposite, okay? You only do the opposite or change signs when you're moving things to the other side of an equal sign, okay? So don't write this, but this is what I've seen as a mistake. Oh, I need to get rid of this, so I'm going to do that over here. Okay, that's you only do that when you're moving things to the other side. Okay, so we're going to keep the same signs that we have because they're already on the same side together. Okay, so we have a 10n and a negative 8n, so that would give me 2n, and we always take the sign of the larger number, so it's a positive, so it's going to stay as a positive. Okay, so to get the little n by itself, I have to do what? Right, and the reason why we're doing the opposite is because we're moving it to the other side. Okay, so negative 16, so that gets rid of it. And then 34 minus 16 gives you 18. And then divide by 2 would be my last step. So n would be 9. Okay, so just remember, you only do the opposite when you're moving things to the other side. You don't do the opposite when they're already on the same side together. Yes? Do you have a question?
Well, no, I did the other way. I subtracted the 16 and then I did the combining that and then I still got the same answer.
You can.
So,
You can.
kind of confusing when you're doing that.
No,
Did I do it wrong?
No, just combining, you still have to combine like terms to get it to one side at one point, whether that's the first thing that you do, okay? Yeah, just as long as you're not like dividing before you're doing your adding and subtracting. So that's okay. It doesn't matter if you're adding the ends or moving the 16 over, that's still you're adding and subtracting first.
Solving
Right. Okay, it's always just the multiply and divide is last. Okay, next one. Good old fractions. Okay, so 4/5 x equals a negative 1 1/6. Okay, our first step is we need to change this one, okay? Before we can do anything in combining or moving or doing anything. Okay, so to do that, we multiply the denominator times whatever the whole number is, and then what do we do with that? Add it, right? So 6 times a negative 1 is a negative 6, and a negative 6, wait, ignore my negative. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 would make it 7. So it's a negative 7 over 6. Good. Spark? Yes. Oh, we know this. Yeah. Okay. We good so far? Okay, so when a fraction is right next to the x, this means times. Okay, so opposite of times, because we're at our very last step, the opposite of times would be the what? Divide. And when I divide on this side, I'm also, to get rid of it, I'm also dividing on this side. Okay, so I can write it on this side, even though I already know I'm getting rid of it. Okay, so we keep dot flip, right? And when we flip, they'll cross cancel each other on this side. Okay, and we already know that it goes away on that side because that's what we're doing when we flip it over here. But now I need to keep dot flip. So if you can remember, when you have a fraction over here, when you take it to the other side, just flip it. Okay. So now we have a negative 7 over 6 times 5 over 4. Is there any cross canceling that we can do? No. Okay, so going straight across, so 7 times 5, negative 35, and then 6 times 4 would be 24. Okay, and then we need to change it into a mixed number. So 24 can go into 35 one time, right? So it's still going to be a negative, that part didn't change. Okay, now subtracting 24 from 35 leaves how many left? 11. And that's your numerator. Over your denominator, you just bring over the denominator. That is the same. Okay, so negative 1 and 11/24. Do not give me decimals in this section. If it was a fraction question, if it doesn't come out as a whole number, it's a fraction. Okay. We good? Yes.
So when you're turning the improper fraction into a mixed fraction, you 6 times negative 1.
But you got to ignore the negative.
Okay.
It's 6 times because it's going to stay as a negative. Okay, because, and I slipped and said that. It is 6 times negative 1, which is going to be a negative 6. But then when you have a negative 6 plus 1, then it would have changed it to a 5. So if you had 5 over 6, that's not equivalent to 1 1/6.
Right.
Right. So ignore your negative. So 6 times 1 is 6 plus 1, and then give it back to the negative. Because you're just rewriting the fraction part of it. You're not solving an equation. Okay, good? So negative 2x plus 1/12 plus 3x minus 1/4 equals 7/12. Okay, so we've already talked about our love for fractions. So you can work with fractions if you know all the rules of adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing with fractions. Or we can choose to get rid of the fractions and not work with fractions, okay? And so to do that, you want to multiply by the common denominator, okay? So what, and I'm just going to abbreviate here. So let this out. What is the common denominator? I heard 4. No. Common denominator. Yeah, 12. Okay. So 12 is our common denominator. So we're going to take this whole equation, not just part of it, the whole equation, and we're going to multiply it by the common denominator. Okay, so if you have fractions in your equation, look to see what all of those denominators can go into, basically. Are you okay so far? Okay, so now we've got to distribute, and everything, the 12 gets distributed to everything, not just the ones that have the fractions. Okay, so 12 gets distributed to this. So 12 times negative 2 is going to be a negative 24x. Good. Okay, now the 12 is getting distributed to this. What does distribute mean? Timesing, right? Okay, so I'm going to write this down. You don't have to write this down, but you'll write the next step down, okay? When I'm timesing, I'm really going 12 times 1/12. If you had something that looked like this, what can we do to simplify that? If I have 12 over 1 times 1 over 12, they cross cancel, right? The 12 goes into 12, okay, and it would just leave 1. So that's what you're doing. That's why we put this number out here, is we're trying to get rid of this number, okay? So you're really just cross-canceling the 12, and whatever's left is still there, okay? So that's plus 1, right? Because that's simplified all down to 1 because it cross-canceling. Okay, now I'm distributing the 12 to the 3x. So 12 times 3x is going to be 36x. Good. Okay, now when I distribute to here, the 4 goes into the 12 how many times? 3. So it's really 3 that I'm distributing to whatever's left as the numerator. So 3 times what's left would be a negative 3. And where that came from goes back to this process that we have right here. And you don't need to write this, just so you understand it. If I go 12 over 1 and I'm timesing it times the negative 1/4, the 4 goes into the 12 3 times. So 3 times negative 1 is a negative 3. Okay, so you can start getting in the habit of just knowing that divides into that, distribute that. Okay, what is the last one? What kind of stuff? Positive or negative? Stay positive. It stays the same, right? Not going to switch like this one had a negative in it. Okay, so the 12 goes into 12 one time. So I distribute the 1 to whatever's left there, so it's going to stay as a positive 7. Okay, questions up to there? Okay, so now this is a lot friendlier to work with because this part right here. We don't have any fractions to deal with. Okay, so now we're just combining our like terms. So I have a negative 24 and a positive 36. They're already on the same side together, so I don't switch any signs. Gives me what? 12. Okay. Okay, then I have this one and this one, which would be a negative 2. Okay, now I'm going to start doing opposites, because now I have to start moving them to the other side. So the first step would be add 2. Okay. So now I have 12x equals 9. Last step is to divide by 12. Okay, so I would have 9 over 12, which we can reduce that, because 3 can go into both of them, right? So 3 goes into there 3 times, 3 goes into there. Okay, so 1 up in 3/4. So make sure you reduce it. Now that one you could have a decimal, because it's a terminating decimal. That I would take. The other ones didn't though. 3/4 is your answer. Yeah, simplified down. Okay, we're good? Okay, I think that was my last one. Yep, that was our last one. Okay, So when do I collect your note?